Perhaps you could just introduce yourself then to the viewers of Positive TV. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you're doing over here.
So my name is Alan Wallace, and I've been a practicing Buddhist for more than 40 years. I was a monk for 14 years. But academically, I have a degree in physics, philosophy of science, as well as a doctorate in religious studies from Stanford University. I taught for 4 years in the University of California in religious studies, and since the year 2003, I have founded and run the Santa Barbara Institute for Consciousness Studies. So the center, or the core themes of my interests are the study of consciousness, its origins, its potential, the nature of consciousness, and how to approach it from interdisciplinary and cross-cultural perspectives.
Very good. Interesting. Okay, so you're here for a particular course at the moment?
I'm here in the UK for about 2 weeks as part of a 5-week tour of Europe, including 6 countries, where I'm giving lectures, leading workshops, leading meditation retreats. But they all come back to themes of cultivating the mind, tapping into the inner resources of consciousness, with a special emphasis on developing one's attention skills, tapping into inner sources of well-being, cultivating emotional balance, but always reaching out to interdisciplinary dialogue, collaboration, and research with people in the mind sciences, even in physics, philosophy of mind, with applications for education, business, and other fields of human endeavor.
Okay, so from a perspective of an uninitiate, meditation, is this the bottom line?
When I use the term meditation, I'm drawing from my Asian background, especially Tibetan Buddhism, and in that context, meditation really simply means to cultivate. So meditation often has something of an esoteric nature to it, something that very unusual people might be interested in, spiritual people, mystical people. Whereas when I think of meditation, I think simply of cultivating the heart and mind in various very useful, beneficial ways. So certainly, as we are tapping into the resources of our natural environment for energy and so forth, trying to find sustainable economies, a sustainable engagement with the environment, I feel that this focus on the outward, as valuable and as indispensable as it is, really must be complemented and balanced by a focus on the inward, and that is tapping into exploring our own inner resources. And one could virtually define meditation as an array of theories and practice designed to tap into, realize, to cultivate our inner resources for well-being.
Okay, so are you suggesting then that through a practice of meditation that you're able to change things physically in your body?
That's now scientifically demonstrated. It's beyond all reasonable doubt, and I've been involved in collaborative research with scientists now for a full 22 years. The evidence is in, so it's really no longer a matter of debate. Informed people know, not only from meditation, but from a wide variety of other types of mental training, that there are clearly measurable effects on the brain. One of the most interesting studies was on London cabbies of the old school that didn't have the GPS. And people who had been cabbies for 10, 20, 30 years, there were parts of the brain that it was simply much more fully developed, not through meditation, but through the mental exercises of knowing the layout of the whole of London and knowing how to go from here to there, given rush hour traffic, time of the day, and detours and all that kind of thing. And so parts of the brain developed. Well, as that is true for a professional cab driver, then likewise there are qualities of the mind, whether it's empathy, attention skills, mindfulness, inner strength, and so forth, that can be cultivated, and let us call it then through meditation, but they have measurable impacts upon the brain, and by way of the brain, they can influence the endocrine system, the immune system, and one's overall health and well-being. So this is, everything I'm saying there is a scientifically established fact, and it is a very burgeoning region now of scientific research to look at this interface between meditation and brain science and psychology, both clinical psychology, looking for the applications of meditation for mental health, for alleviating mental disease, but also enhancing mental health into the realm of positive psychology. So even if you're normal, you're healthy, how can you be exceptionally healthy? And we have an excellent parallel in this regard, and that is the many people who've been training for the the Olympics coming up. So these Olympic athletes, they're not trying to get healthy. We're just assuming they started out healthy, But now they're looking to push the envelope. How strong, how resilient, how supple, in terms of stamina and so forth. How can we raise the standards of excellence? So we have that for health, we have that for exercise, we have that for diet, we have that for hygiene and eating healthy food. What we don't have yet in our rather materialistic modern society is, while we have this emphasis on the material and on physical health, what we don't have yet is something that's utterly commonsensical, and that is a vision of mental hygiene and cultivating, training the mind to exceptional degrees, so that you're exceptionally mentally healthy, exceptionally mentally fit, like an Olympic gymnast. And so where are those? How can you train it? How can you measure it? This calls for a full-scale collaboration between scientists, people in the health professions, and then people professionally trained in the theory and practices of meditation.
So this must have wonderful implications for other commonplace areas, such as business, perhaps.
Certainly for business. I mean, so much in the business world hinges on, as we know now, emotional intelligence. It's not just sheer productivity, but it's how do the personnel in a business, from the management right down to the lowliest workers in the business, how do they all interrelate with each other? Is it harmonious? Is it mutually respectful? And so forth. Do they get along? And can they be creative together? Or is it all dog-eat-dog competitiveness? So it's not to say that being competitive is wrong. It certainly can be very useful. But what is the ambience? What's the mood of it? And it can be quite friendly, you know? And so harmony within the workplace, there's a crucial point. It's hard to put a dollar value on it, but it certainly is very important. But then how do you create a workspace and a quality of mind, of body and mind, since the two are so profoundly entangled, that really allows you full creativity to manifest? And I won't mention any names, but I've been in some very, very progressive businesses where as soon as you step in the door, it's light, it's transparent, it's friendly, kind of like, oh, I'd love to work here, you know? So you create an ambience, and then within that, I am thinking actually of one business in particular, then within that there's a strong emphasis on meditation, on developing mental balance, but also very healthy food, and there's a lap pool, and you can have massages and so forth. And so it sounds very cushy, like this is some kind of a country club or a health spa. Well, it is actually one of the most lucrative, progressive, and successful businesses in the modern world. So anybody who's following it probably knows the business I have in mind. I will leave it anonymous because I'm sure there are more than one. But this has very tangible value in the business world. And then, of course, there's an adjacent theme that is actually catching the attention of more and more people in the business world, and that is ethics. It's ethics of the individuals in the business and ethics of the business as a whole. There's a lot of animosity towards big business in the modern world, and in many respects for good reason. But then not all businesses are created evil. Or equal. And so, yes, you're quite right. Applicability in the business world. Applicability in something that would be hard to find anything more important, and that is education.
Wow, yes.
That is, how can we serve our children, our young people, our adolescents, and right through college and right into graduate work? How can we serve them well that they're not only learning trades, learning skills that are marketable by which they can make a livelihood, but how can we educate our young people so that they can actually flourish in the world? The impact that our human species has had on the planet over the last century has been without precedent in all of recorded history. We are changing the environment, and we know this now by way of global warming, but in a myriad of other ways. So the environment itself, the natural environment, the social environment, is changing so fast that I think we need to really extend ourselves, draw on the full extent of our imagination to think, how can we best prepare our children not only to get by and survive, but how can they flourish in this rapidly changing environment that is so fast-paced, so calling for multitasking and so forth? How can we help them to be emotionally resilient, to maintain a composure emotionally, attentionally, mindfully, creatively? Are these trainable skills, and if so, how? And if you have a how can you measure that? So once again, what I'm looking for here, and I'm working with people in multiple disciplines, is to break down barriers that easily arise between science and religion, conservatives and progressives and so forth, say, where's the common ground and how can we work together? All of us, whether you're a religious fundamentalist or you're a very hardcore atheist, if you ask any of these people, do you care about the education of children? The answer, of course, is yes. Do you care about business? That businesses flourish, they prosper, turning out a good product, and so forth, serving the community? The answer would be yes. Then we can ask about mental health. Whatever your ideology is, do you care about the mental health of yourself, your family, your community? That we have effective ways of dealing, treating with, and not just managing, but healing mental disease. And then once a person is free of mental disease, you can say, all right, you can go home now, no more therapy needed. Do we really need to be satisfied there? Well, as we take the analogy again of the Olympic athletes, they didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I think I can stop. They say, I'm healthy, I'm fit, how can I excel? How can I go for optimal performance? And so as we have this physically, how about mentally, in terms of creativity, but also virtues of kindness, of compassion. These also, whether you're an atheist or a religious fundamentalist, do you value kindness, patience, forbearance, mindfulness, attentiveness, concentration? And the answer again, we're finding common ground. So we have it in business, we have it in education, we have it in mental health, but overall our health care, because body and mind are so profoundly entangled. And then something that a lot of people care about, not everyone, but an awful lot of people do, and that's athletics. That athletics does not boil down to physical training alone. There's such a thing as team effort. So, apart from singles tennis and a few other things like golf and so forth, many of these are team efforts. So what's that dynamic among the various members of the team? You know, and so could attention, mindfulness, empathy, and so forth, a sense of bonding and so forth, how can that be cultivated? How can you work together as one unit, right? It's mind, it's not just muscles and sheer basketball skill of putting the ball into the net. And so for team sports, but then also for these games and sports, such as golf, tennis, and so forth, it's so psychological, so psychological. So the person who wins the match, wins the game, and so forth, that edge that they have is probably psychological. And so can this be cultivated? Can it be trained? And then, of course, for many people, their idols are the great sports champions, And if we find, here's a great, I won't mention a name, but this one is and he or she meditates an hour a day, and that seems to have given this person the edge, then how many young people would say, oh, but that person's my hero. I'd love to, what did you do? What did you do? And then they would want to do it out of a sense of jubilation, of excitement, of adventure. Wow, if I can train in that aspect, maybe even if I'm not an Olympic athlete or professional football player, maybe I can be all that I can be. I can go for my optimal performance. So there's really, as you can see from the very tone of my voice, there's something of a celebration here, because what we are not doing, and it's so crucially important that we're not creating divisions. And divisions are being thrown up every which way, and we all suffer as a result of them. When the divisions are there, and then we go into kind of a fierce and hostile competitiveness. This actually is not to anyone's advantage over the long term. So when you find these common themes, and then we invite people from religion, from contemplative practices, from psychology, from education, from business, from science, and say, look, aren't these issues of common interest, common value, and are these not of enormous importance in today's world, grappling with these enormous challenges that we have, socially, environmentally, economically? I think this is the way forward. And it's all through networking and collaboration.
Well, that's an astonishing, hugely overview, and it's wonderful and something everybody should aspire to. Can you offer perhaps, lastly, just a kind of some useful advice on getting started? Where would people look? What would they do? How would they begin?
Well, we want to start in something utterly practical. And to my mind, the place to start is to address an issue that we already care about, that we don't have to be taught to care about. If you're taught, then you can easily unteach yourself and forget about it. But for every, I would say, now it's a generalization, for every meaningful human endeavor, our ability to focus our attention is absolutely indispensable. It doesn't matter whether it's playing golf, it's sailing, it's doing a crossword puzzle, it's having a meaningful conversation, it's getting education, it's performing dentistry. It doesn't, the whole array, all of it. The ability to be able to focus your attention. Now, overall, and there are many scientific studies of this, when people focus their attention, and the more intently they do so, the more concentration they do so, there's a general theme. People go into contraction, they tighten up, they go into effort mode, and then as long as they're sustaining the attention, they are draining themselves. They're getting stressed out, they're getting tighter and tighter and tighter until if they do this for hours on end, they're really drained and exhausted at the end. Many studies of this sort. But now the contemplatives of the world, and I'm speaking here in an utterly non-sectarian way, so I won't even mention any one tradition, no need. But contemplative traditions of the world, the East and West, ancient and modern, have turned out to be some of the greatest experts, or provided expertise, for developing attention skills. And I would suggest in 3 ways. And a number of these have already been scientifically tested, so once again, no barriers between the contemplative or the meditative and then the scientific. And the first of these is one of the first features or benefits of meditation that was ever studied. And this was by the Harvard research physician Herbert Benson, in a book published decades ago called The Relaxation Response. They were studying TM. They said, well, here's one effect, and that is if you do this simple form of meditation, that when you come out of it, you feel more relaxed, more at ease. Well, this is a good thing. All right, just for starters. Now, is that all that meditation is about? Definitely not. Emphatically not. But in terms of developing attention skills, if you can first of all be at ease in your body and mind without becoming dull, drowsy, or spaced out, that's a good start. So we establish a foundation or a root system in cultivating a sense of ease, of relaxation, of looseness, of comfort in body and mind. And then within that context, then we very gently then cultivate the composure of the attention, the focus of attention, the continuity of attention, so that we can sustain focused attention on a large topic, a small topic, a changing topic, a relatively stable topic. But whether it's listening to a teacher in the classroom, whether it's working on a business plan, composing music, or having a conversation with your child, all of these, to be able to maintain a continuity, a focused, composed attention, without seizing up, without tightening up, and then draining yourself with just nervous wear and tear. If you can simultaneously keep that sense of ease, relaxation, while maintaining a continuity of focus, now you have what we call relaxation and stability. And then on top of that, if the stability is not kind of gradually fading into dullness, but if you can then, while maintaining that sense of ease and stability, also not only sustain but gradually arouse a greater and greater clarity, acuity, high definition, sharpness of attention, you now have the winning combination. And if you can develop those 3, and this can be done and is scientifically tested in one very, very large scientific study that I actually initiated called the Shamatha Project. This has been studied and the results are they're unequivocal, first-rate scientific study, that these are qualities that can be trained. Okay? And it's this combination of a sense of relaxation, the stability, coherence, continuity of attention, and then the clarity of attention. And when these are cultivated meditatively, that's through training, then you find that not only are you cultivating all 3, but the 3 are cultivated in a synergistic fashion. So the greater calm, coherence, stability of attention, that actually sets you more and more at ease. But now as you feel that greater sense of relaxation, which is composed, that quiets the mind, and so the greater clarity comes up. But as greater clarity comes up, everything becomes more interesting. It's vivid, it's high definition, and it's more interesting. That also lends greater composure, continuity of attention. You don't get so distracted because you're so interested. But as the mind is more composed, has an inner calm, that's more relaxing. And so a jet fighter pilot, we go into the opposite extreme, a jet fighter pilot flying at Mach 1, Mach 2, they have extraordinary ability for focused attention, and they can sustain it. And then after 4 or 5 hours, they get out of the cockpit and they are wiped out. They need 24 hours of R&R, rest and relaxation. Whereas I have lived with yogis. I was a monk for 14 years. I meditated on the average 3 hours a day nowadays. And many days I'm meditating 9 or 10 hours a day. But we know, and I know from people I know, that an accomplished yogi, or that is a person who is very adept at contemplative practice, these people can go into a state of focused attention and maintain it hours on end, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and at the end of the day, feel relaxed. Relaxed, smooth, calm, and it's not just your attention skills, but this turns out to be really healthy. It's really good for you, and that was a major outcome of the scientific study of the so-called Shamatha Project as well. The developing attention skills is not simply useful in a utilitarian sense of greater productivity, optimal performance, and so forth, but also it's really, in a way, boosting your psychological immune system so that you're not so prone to anxiety, depression, feeling restless, bored, ill at ease, irritable, and so forth. But there's a greater sense of peace of mind. And the word sanity means etymologically wholeness. There's a greater sense of unification, wholeness, of poise and balance. And that's a sign of a healthy mind.
Where would a seeker find more information?
Well, I think the place that certainly all the young people go, and all of those who would love to be young, is the internet. And so I would just start from what I really know. The Santa Barbara Institute for Consciousness Studies. This is a central theme of what we do. So that's very easy to find on the internet. My own personal website is a good place to start. I've written many, many books and translated. But also here in the UK, we have the Contemplative Consciousness Network. And this is just starting up, but the vision is marvelous. We have some very, very capable people seeking to do something here in the UK that will be local, that will be very interdisciplinary, that will be focusing on these same themes, and that we're now working for networking. So I live, when I'm at home, in Santa Barbara, but I'm traveling very extensively around the world. I'm the chairman of a center in Phuket, Thailand, the Tanyapura Mind Center, and there are other centers in Brazil, in India, in Mongolia, in Mexico, and so forth. So I think it would be absolutely marvelous to have a very major node of this type of research. And it's not only research into the nature of the mind, the potentials of the mind, but this outreach into these fields such as mental health and overall health, education, business, athletics, just for starters, those. And did I say business? And so those, that there's practical applications in areas that people already care about. And so create such a network here, let it really become grounded, as they say, with bricks and mortar, have a real center, immediately move into collaboration with other like-minded people, projects, and so forth. Because in this field, the term competition really is meaningless. Collaboration is meaningful. And so collaboration here within the UK extending out to the rest of Europe, North and South America, globally, and so forth. I think through such networking and collaboration, places for in-depth research of what we call contemplative observatories, but then the outreach into education and so forth. I think we have some very gifted people here, lofty motivations, and a lot of practical skills to bring this about. And the UK is where it's at.
Thank you very much for talking to Positive TV.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.